Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mila, you're at my book nook, and today I have a book recommendations video where I'm going to give you a book recommendation based on your favorite mythological creature. Now this doesn't mean that said mythological creature, and I've got I think two pairs, like three that are like for one sort of section and two that are for one sort of vibe, because they're very similar. So I didn't want to do like a separate one for like mermaids, a separate one for Rusalkas, a separate one for sirens, because that would be too long of a video, and I imagine with all my yapping this would be a long enough video in general. So I've decided to group all of them, also because this is like an Instagram post as well. Like it was originally a concept for an Instagram post, so I'm just deciding to make it a booktube video as well. So if I'm looking down, I have my sort of Bookstagram post, so that's what I'm going off of. And then if I'm looking that way, it's just to make sure that I am more or less in frame. So also apologies for the lighting. It has been snowing all day. Like everyone's home. University closed for the day, suspended operations. My siblings have a snow day, so we're all home. So yeah. So with that being said, I'm just gonna make this bigger. There we go. Okay. So books for your favorite mythological creatures. As I said, I'm going to group some of these creatures because they're similar vibes, similar sort of aspects and stuff like that. And there's gonna be like overlap, obviously. Like everyone's gonna have. There's gonna be a Firebird creature. There's gonna be some sort of drowned woman that has a voice, you know, that lures you in, that kind of thing, right? So yeah, and most of these recommendations, it doesn't mean that the creatures are in the book necessarily. It just means that there's a lot of overlap between the aspects of the book, whether it's the character work, whether it's the sort of the lesson behind the work, whether it's sort of the writing style, the storytelling, that kind of thing, that coincides with, I think, with the vibes of the mythological creatures. Anyways, that's a rambly introduction. I hope you enjoyed that rambling introduction. Without further ado, let us start. And the first group I have is Sirens, Mermaids, and Rusalkas. Now, in this case, we're gonna go with the Sirens that are half woman, half fish. Okay, because in the Odyssey, or in most, I think, ancient texts, if I'm not mistaken, or specifically in Odyssey, they're half bird, half fish. But in very modern interpretations of the Sirens, they're most often half bird, half human, or half fish, half human, half bird. But they're technically like originally half bird, half human. Mermaids. They're sort of derived, I think, from Sirens. In Russian, for example, like the word Rusalka means mermaid. But in English, there's like separate ones, right? So there's the Sirens, which is different from the Mermaids, which is different from the Rusalkas, because the Rusalkas are specifically Slavic folklore. And the difference between the Rusalkas and the Sirens are that the Sirens are monsters from the get-go, so to speak. Like they're half fish, half human, or half bird, half human from the get-go. Whereas the Rusalkas are usually women that have died by drowning, whether it's self-inflicted or by someone else, and so they lure other people in and drown them. And there's a similarity between sort of the three, which is their singing voice. So yeah, and I do have on the Instagram post, if you want to check that out, I don't know when it'll be published, but if you want to check that out, I do have a description of the Sirens. So I did descriptions for each sort of animal or for each creature, and I did like specific ones. In this case, I did a description of the Sirens because that was the easiest one to find. And this is Circe's description of the Sirens from the Odyssey, from book 12, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. It's either book 10 or book 12, I don't remember. But it is lines 38 to 40 in the Evie Ryu translation. And she says, your next encounter will be with the Sirens who bewitch everybody who approaches them. And this is Circe talking to Odysseus. So the first book I have, this comes as a surprise to no one, is Deathless by Catherine M. Valente. And I wrote, this is a retelling of the tale of Maria Morevna and Kache the Deathless set before and during the Soviet Union and World War II. And I said that the reason why I chose this, Maria Morevna has to resist the siren song of Kache, the siren song of becoming his queen at the risk of losing herself. And honestly, that's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. Next, I have two books per creature, so to speak. Next, I have The Poppy War, and I wrote that this is a fantasy book set during a world inspired by the events of the Second Sino-Japanese War. Rin is an orphan who discovers she has a special affinity that everyone thought died out with a specific people. She must resist the siren call of said power or lose herself and the world she strives to protect, lest she destroys it. So I feel like that's sort of self-explanatory. Next, we have another combination, and that is the Phoenix and the Firebird. Now, the Phoenix is specifically a creature that rises from its ashes. That is very specific to the Phoenix. The Firebird, as far as I understand it from tales that I've heard, is specifically... The Firebird that I'm referring to is the Žar Ptice, so it is the Slavic one. It is not... I'm not referring to the Simorg, which is from Persian mythology, specifically from the Shahnameh. So I'm specifically referring to the Slavic Firebird. I need y'all to understand it is the Slavic Firebird the Žar Ptice that I'm referring to. So the Phoenix specifically, when it dies, it rises from its ashes, so it's like reborn from its ashes. The Firebird is similar in the sense that they both have like fire powers, and their feathers are very sort of attractive and very highly sought. However, I do not think, as far as I'm aware, that the Firebird dies and comes back from its ashes. I think that is purely a Phoenix thing. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure, but as far as what Google tells me, and from what I remember about the Firebird, there hasn't really been an instant of the Firebird really dying and coming from its ashes, whereas in the Phoenix stories, it is a very common element. However, they do both have something to do with life and death and resurrection, and sort of starting anew, like destroying everything and starting anew. That is a common theme between them. So this is the description of the Firebird. This is translated from Russian by Arthur Ransom, and the story is called The Firebird, the Horse of Power, and the Princess Vasilisa. So it says, there was a mighty wind. The sea piled itself into waves with crests of foam, and the Firebird came flying from the other side of the world. Huge and golden and flaming in the sun, it flew, dropped down with open wings into the field, and began to eat the maize. So this is specifically translated from like the stories of Afanasyev, and this is specifically in a collection of stories called, I think, Old Peter's Tales or something like that. And this is translated by, I believe he was scholar, Arthur Ransom. So the first book I have is a little on the nose with the Firebird, but this is, again, in reference to the Simorg, not the specific, like, Slavic Firebird. It is called Dawn of the Firebird by Sarah Mughal-Rana, and if you've been living under a rock and you're new here, this was my favorite book of 2025, and I do not shut up about it. Sarah is also a dear friend of mine. I will still not shut up about the book. So what I said is, the daughter of a king has to infiltrate the enemy that destroyed all she's ever known while balancing her power and the possibility of what her destiny is. The reason why I chose this for the Firebird / the Phoenix. Just as the Firebird flies through the sky, so does our main character fly through the world, rising from the ashes, bringing life back to the world. I'm now realizing there's a typo, but anyways. The next book I have is Blood Over Bright Haven by Emma Wong. This was also very much a surprise for me last year. It became like one of my top books of 2025. It was really great. It was really surprising. Ending had me shook. I was flabbergasted. I wrote, the first female mage comes crashing through society as she progresses in her power and also discovers the truth behind the magic she has so often coveted and taken for granted. And the reason why I chose this for this creature is, just like the Firebird / Phoenix, Siona also flies through the world and helps the world be rebirthed. That is all I was saying on that matter. Next, we have the Sphinx. The Sphinx is one of my favorite creatures because I love a good riddle. I love when there is an air of intelligence to a creature, because you have something like, because a lot of these creatures are set to destroy, right? They're eating the humans, they're eating the other creatures, they're destroying places and all that stuff, but the Phoenix only eats you if you answer the riddle wrong. So this is books with some sort of intelligence factor and stuff like that. And it's obvious that it is a very intelligent book, or there's a very intelligent character in it. And it requires a little more brain power. Just a little bit more, So this is the description of the Sphinx from the story of Oedipus Rex. It's referring to the story of Oedipus Rex. It's not from the story of Oedipus Rex. Wow, say that 5 times fast. It is from Apollodorus' Bibliotheca 3, and it is lines 52 to 55. While Creon was king, quite a scourge held Thebes in suppression, for Hera sent upon them the Sphinx, whose parents were Echidna and Typhon. She had a woman's face, the breast, feet, and tail of a lion, and bird wings. She had learned a riddle form from the Muzai, and now sat on Mount Ficyon, where she kept challenging the Thebans with it. So that is the description of the Sphinx. And Creon is specifically the king of Thebes. He is in Oedipus Rex. So the first book I have is, surprise, surprise, The Will of the Many. This was my favorite book when I read it. And then I actually read it as an arc, and I have to reread it in order to read the second one, but that's a whole other conversation. It's coming. I swear the reading vlog is coming. I'm just too caught up with everything else. So I will read you the sort of elevator pitch that I wrote. In a world inspired by the Roman Republic with a literal pyramid scheme power, our main character must learn and answer riddles and find the answers to the things that haunt him and those he loves most. And as for why I chose this for the Sphinx specifically, Vin must find the answer to the myriad of riddles thrown at him as he tries to take out a power from within. So he does have to figure out some things, and he has to do it in a very subtle way. The other book that I have is A Master of Jinn, and this was such a breath of fresh air. And I've read one of the novellas since, and I really should read the other two novellas and just do a whole reread, because I want to be back in this world so much. It was such a breath of fresh air. This is set in set in like the 1910s, Cairo, 1912 Cairo, I think specifically, if I'm not mistaken. I keep on saying 1920s Cairo. It's not 1920s Cairo. It's 1910s. And we follow our main character, who is 1920s Cairo. I wrote 1920s Cairo here. I don't think it's 1920s Cairo. Okay, editing Mila will fix it if it is 1920s, if it's not 1920s Cairo. Or am I confusing it with A Master of Jinn? I think I'm confusing it with City of Brass. I'm so confused. Anyways, moving on. Sorry guys, it's a little bit chaotic here. Set in an alternate history, 1920 Cairo, where jinn and other magical entities exist. A murder at the beginning of the book brings up the possible return of a prolific figure of the past. And the reason why I chose this is our main character, the youngest hijabi detective, must figure out what actually happened during the murder before it's too late. So she does have to figure out clues, and she has to figure out, I guess not necessarily riddles, but she has to figure out clues. Oh, and I have, yikes. It says Sphinx on here, but it's actually a description of the Griffins. The last creature that I have for you is the Griffin. Okay, I have to fix that if I did schedule this post. Whoops. So Sphinx are usually guardians. They guard gold most often. So this is the description of the Griffins from Ctesias's Indica, which, fun fact, is a lost book of I think he's a philosopher or something like that, or a historian, and it's his description of the Indian subcontinent. And it's a lost book, so we only have bits and pieces, I guess. So this is his description. There's also gold in India, not found in rivers and washed, as in the river Pactolus in Lydia, but in many large mountains which are inhabited by gripes or griffins. These are four-footed birds as large as a wolf, their legs and claws resembling those of a lion, their breasts feathers are red, those of the rest of the body black. Although there is an abundance of gold in the mountains, it is difficult to get it because of these birds. So there's that protectiveness, that loyalty to the gold and stuff like that. They're not necessarily hoarders. Okay, this isn't dragons. Dragons are hoarders. Griffins are not. Okay, in some cases they can be, but dragons are the hoarders here, okay? First I have Untethered Sky, and this is what I gave you. Novella from the writing of Fonda Lee comes a story about a girl and her rook, the only known predator of the manticore. It's a novella, so I'm not going to give you much. Rooks are bonded to their human trainers and are protective of them the way Griffins are often seen to be. I seriously have to fix this. Wow. So I don't want to give too much, but basically in this world, manticores are the big bad monster, and our main character, Esther, her family dies because of a manticore, and so she decides that she's going to train a rook, or a roc, which comes from Persian mythology, and they're very similar to griffins. In fact, it could be just griffins are the Greek version of rocs or rocks. And the next book I have is The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. A group of ragtags sign up for a mission, or rather are voluntold that takes them through various places, forcing them to work together despite their differences to get the rightful heir to the throne. Just like Griffins, our guardians, our group of ragtags become protective of the Princess of Troy and guard her at the possible expense of their own lives. So, I know that was a little bit of a chaotic recommendation video, but I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you understood why I recommended certain books for certain creatures. Let me know what your favorite creatures are down below, and I will compile maybe a part 2 if you'd like, if this video ends up being liked enough, I guess. I don't know, I've never done this style of video before, like this very specific mythological creature one, so I want to do a part 2 for sure. I just wanted to start with maybe some lesser known animal, like creatures, instead of going for like dragons or like goblins or whatever. Yeah, or like elves or something like that, right? But they're not exactly mythological creatures, are they? Anyways, like fairies and stuff like that. So, and there's like different types of fairies. Like there's the fae, and then there's the fairy, and then there's like the cutesy fairies, and then there's like the little ones and big ones and all that stuff, you know? So if you have a very specific favorite mythological creature, let me know which one it is down below. Give me a little description if you can. And also recommend books, and I will add them to the next video. You know, if you have any book recommendations, or if you have a book and you're like, oh, what would you like which creature would you connect this to? I can possibly give you an answer in the next one. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. As usual, let me know your thoughts down below. Follow me on all my socials, especially my Instagram. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. I'm trying to get to 1K this year. That is a big goal of mine. And I will, as usual, see you in the next one. Happy reading.